One of the strongest aspects to the show's Diamond Dynasty mode is not only its plethora of legends, but the range of different eras these players come from. When someone is able to run an outfield of Babe Ruth, Rickey Henderson, and a young hot stud like Lars Nootbaar, it adds so much replayability and reason to come back. We as a community are always hoping for more legends to be added to the game. Some of us have even made lists hundreds of players long, neatly arranged with biographies and cards already mocked up. I am not nearly that organized, but still feel similarly. Instead of 100 legends, I'm going to name just a few in this video, and instead of looking at every player who has ever appeared in the majors, I am going to put my scope today on a specific time frame and position. Episode numero uno. I am going to list the top 3 relief pitchers from the 1970s I'd like to see added. In the game currently, we have a few great closers from this time, like Bruce Sutter and Raleigh Fingers. But there are so many more great ones we are missing out on. For this video, I will be using relief pitcher and closer interchangeably. The role of the one-inning relief pitcher had only started to come about in the 70s. So, please leave all your hate messages in the comments below. Now, to arrive at my conclusion, I had to weigh some factors and numbers against each other to narrow down the list. Specifically, I looked at some academic papers on detailed exclusion analytical models, graphs of empirical principle statistics, binders full of quantitative density matrices, and so much more. I broke these results down into 3 main categories to look for when making my final selection. 1. Career accolades. 2. Cultural impact. And 3. Facial hair. Using these complex stats, I came to my highly scientific and equally undebatable list here. First, some quick context. The relief pitcher is arguably one of the youngest positions in baseball. The main stat they're ranked by, apart from mustache length, the save, is only a few months older than the all-time leader of said stat, Mariano Rivera. The stat did not exist as a recorded measurement of performance until the 1960s. Famed Chicago sports writer Jerome Holtzman coined the term in the 50s, and the stat was officially adopted for the 1969 season, the first newly tracked statistic since the RBI in 1920. The Sandman was born in November 1969. The earliest days of baseball were dominated by the starting pitcher. As late as the 1890s, 85% of all pitching starts would end as complete games. In the first 3 decades of pro baseball, the all-time single-season save leader was Al Spalding in 1875 with 9 saves, a season where he went 54-5 with 52 complete games. Through the 1925 season, the most career saves was 49 from the Hall of Fame starting pitcher Mordecai Three-Finger Brown. Complete games were coming down as each decade went by, as the nuances of baseball were understood more. By baseball's 75th birthday in the 1940s, less than 50 pitchers had earned over 30 career saves. Sounding like my high school history teacher, then World War II came and changed everything. Not only did the relief pitcher become a specific position in the baseball world during the latter half of the 1940s, it quickly gained a lot of respect when in 1950, the Phillies closer Jim Constanti won the NL MVP award. Even when factoring in the years before the rule changes to the mound in 1968, the 60s saw the lowest percentage of complete games, with the largest use of relief pitchers in baseball's history so far. Now tracking the stat, 1970 saw the record for saves in a single season stand at 35 by the Reds' Wayne Granger. That will balloon up to 45 within a decade and a half. Okay, finally we have arrived at the context of my very simple list of 3 relief pitchers from the 1970s I'd like to see in MLB The Show. A few honorable mentions. First off, Dan Quisenberry, 5-time Relief Pitcher of the Year, 244 career saves, and 1 exceptional mustache. Had Quiz pitched more than 1 year in the 1970s, I would have bent the rules to include him. Second, Bob Locker. I mentioned Bob and his on-again, off-again relationship with the town of Chicago in a previous video of mine, so fuck it, let's bring him on in. And finally, third, Dick Drago. I literally found out about this man while researching for this video, and am only including him because his name is Dick Drago. Dick Drago. Now on to the official list. Dick Drago. In third place is Iron Mike Marshall. Unlike that fraudster, Tony Stark, Marshall earned his designation as Iron Mike. In the 70s, he appeared in more than 60 games 5 different times, with 4 of those seasons him leading the league. Coming off winning both Montreal Expo Player of the Year and TSN Fireman of the Year in 1973, the Expos traded Marshall to Los Angeles for the longtime Dodgers center fielder, Willie Davis. Once in LA, Marshall had one of the most unique seasons in baseball history. In 1974, Iron Mike set the all-time record for most games pitched in a season, 106, and most consecutive games with a relief appearance at 13. He pitched over 200 innings and had almost 145 strikeouts, all as a relief pitcher. With a sub-250 ERA in his campaign and an unhealthy dose of baseball black magic, Iron Mike won the 1974 NL Cy Young Award. For the rest of the 1970s, Marshall would have a lone season where he did not appear in more than 50 games. He would then set the American League record for most pitching appearances in a season with 90 for the 1979 Minnesota Twins. If all of these workhorse achievements were not enough on his plate, Marshall also had a second commitment at this time. Earlier in the decade, he returned back to his alma mater, Michigan State, and began to further his education. Then, in 1978, Marshall earned the only thing more impressive for a major league pitcher to achieve than a Cy Young or MVP award: a fucking PhD. Now a legit doctor in exercise physiology, Dr. Mike advocated a method to pitching of his own creation that he believed could completely eradicate pitching arm injuries. And based off his career totals, he was onto something. Oh, and you probably thought I forgot all about this. Marshall had a Hall of Fame caliber set of mutton chops with a connected mustache to top it all off. Incredible. Winning the silver medal is Tug McGraw. The Phillies legend and World Series icon claimed to have a repertoire that included a slider, curveball, and 6 different kinds of fastballs named after the sex symbols of his day. Named Frank Edwin McGraw Jr. to parents Mabel and Frank Edwin McGraw Sr., aka Big Mac, in Northern California. Little Mac Jr. Frank got his nickname at a young age. It was given to him by his parents. I'm just going to quote the Big Mac here on how it came about. Tug's mother nursed all three of the boys, and Tug, well, he, Tug. What the fuck? I guess I can now say for sure, though, the first owner of the worst nickname in baseball history for this channel has been crowned, with Frank Edwin McGraw Jr., a.k.a. the Vacuum Titty Sucker. Congratulations, Frank. The Hooter Hoover's career is often described with one primary word: journey. Growing up, Tug was stuck as an outfielder on his high school varsity baseball team. One game, he got his chance to take the mound in the most Tuggerian fashion. After hearing the starter that day was having arm troubles and wanted to play in the outfield, McGraw approached the teammate with an idea. The team's coach was an 80-year-old priest who had trouble seeing. Using this to their advantage, the two lefties quickly swapped jerseys and assumed their new roles for the whole game. The Cleavage Clover remarked to Sports Illustrated later on, quote, "Father Feehan never knew the difference until I got up real close to him after the game." As a pro, he had a long relief tenure in New York until Tug was then traded to the division rival of the Phillies in late 1974. Once in Philadelphia, not only did the team connect for the second half of the decade, but McGraw was a contributing part of that yearly success. After 3 years of getting bounced by the lethal Big Red Machine, finally, in 1980, the Fighting Phils broke through and pushed on to the World Series. In the NLCS against the Houston Astros, Tug pitched in all 5 games. In the 1980 World Series is when McGraw finally shined brightest. In his 4 appearances during the series, he struck out 10, let up 1 earned run, and notched 2 saves. Game 6 became the performance the D-Cup downer extraordinaire is most remembered for. In the 9th, with the bases loaded and the potential game-winning run at the plate, Tug did not let the pressure get to him and struck out the Royal Silver Slugger Willie Wilson to seal the game and the season. This was the first World Series win for Philadelphia in almost 100 years. Also, his son is a musician or something, but that situation is murky. And facial hair-wise, it might not be a strong case for Tug, but those sideburns and flowing locks scream, "Hop in the Trans Am, I got the newest Van Halen tape." The number 1 pitcher I would love to see added to the game, Sparky Lyle. A man of many words, perhaps Lyle's most famous quote, is one of pure honesty. Why pitch 9 innings when you can get just as famous pitching too? His ability on the mound was doubted growing up from a lack of speed and velocity. Eventually, he was able to gain attention as a pitcher in his local Legion team. Here, he would average at least double-digit strikeouts per game. In one extra inning affair, over 14 innings, Lyle walked 8, but made up for this by striking out 31 batters. Drafted in 1964 by Boston, Lyle worked to prove his worth in the Sox system. When he was sent down to Florida for spring training in 1965, this is where Sparky met Ted Williams. Williams was watching Sparky pitch one day when he called Lyle over to talk. He asked the new Boston draftee what he thought the best pitch in baseball was. Unsure of how to respond, Williams answered his own question. He explained to Lyle it was the slider, as that was the only pitch he could never reliably connect with, even if Williams was anticipating it. Lyle was all ears when Ted gave him pointers on how a successful slider coming into a batter looks. One thing Williams did not tell him is how to make that happen, leaving it up to the determined rookie to figure this out for himself. This meeting changed Lyle's life and pushed him to constantly work on elevating his repertoire and perfect his magician-like movement. For his career, the slider became a dangerous weapon in Lyle's arsenal and remained his signature pitch. Once in the league, Sparky would stick around for good. He would earn a career 238 saves, 3 All-Star selections, won the 1977 Cy Young Award, the first time a reliever did it in the American League, but oddly never started a single game in his tenure. Even more known than his intimidating performances on the mound is the man himself, Sparky Lyle. He is an all-time great prankster. Some of his most famous acts include adding live goldfish to the dugout water cooler, buying pizzas for the other team and sending it to their bullpen. His absolute favorite thing to do was cake sitting. As Lyle was a reliever that did not come in at the start of the games, if there was a cake waiting for the Yankees after the game was over, he would sneak in when no one was watching, lower his trousers, and then plant his behind on the cake hard enough to leave an impression. Lyle would have bouts of absolute glee when the game was finished and his teammates discovered his dirty deeds. He eventually stopped cake sitting out of concern for his own tail end, as he became afraid one day he might accidentally sit on a needle baked into the cake. Not only did Lyle help to pioneer amazing mustaches and the role of the closer, but he was also one of the first authors of a sports-related tell-all book filled with intimate and provocative details. Published in 1979, The Bronx Zoo, the astonishing inside story of the 1978 world champion New York Yankees, written by Lyle and Peter Gollenbach, not only became a bestseller, but helped to spawn the lasting nicknames for the Yankees of the 1970s and 80s era. So, those are my 3 choices. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Why or why not? Why are we here? Who are you? Who am I? What is this all about? Dick Drago. I will be honest, going into this video, I did not expect nearly as much nudity in this story as we ended up with. Anyway, as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. I'm building a movement here. A movement to recognize the weirdest parts of sports history. So again, thank you for watching. See you next time. Dick Drago.